Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back in another video from Totally Not Mark, and today we're checking out his review for Season 3 of My Hero Academia. Like I said, Season 1, 2, 3, in my mind, the best parts, My Hero Academia. Let's see what Mark thought of Season 3.
Season 3 is way better than I remember.
There you go.
Let's go!
Let's go!
Season 3 of My Hero Academia flows exceptionally well, and I'm happy to say that flow carried over into the manga's version of events.
Cool.
On more than one occasion, I found myself glued to the page, more interested than I had been in the past to turn to the next one. Now, I should point out that the sometimes difficult to parse page layouts I criticized in the last part haven't suddenly vanished. They're all still there, frustratingly. However, what glued me to the manga this time around was how Horikoshi's approach to writing has evolved, and in particular, how he structured this stretch of content. Anyone who's familiar with my coverage of Dragon Ball Super will recall that while I enjoyed it, I found that it possessed a flaw that neither Z nor My Hero Academia suffered from. A flaw that, in my view, isn't brought up nearly enough today, and that is short-sightedness. While certain seeds for Ultra Instinct were planted as far back as the beginning of the story, the lack of forethought Toei approached the series with created arcs that felt like disconnected, standalone islands of story.
No, it's very true. Super definitely does do that. It's like, boom, next story. What the hell's that got to do with anything? Oh, let's throw a little bit in at the end. It's like, oh.
Battle of Gods is only connected to Resurrection F by the God form. Universe 6 is only connected to Resurrection F by, it's not. It's connected by a line in Battle of Gods. The point is, the arcs are all barely informed by each other. On a macro level, this approach is often referred to as, quote, and then storytelling. Goku and the gang meet Beerus, and then Frieza comes back to life, and then there's a tournament held between Universe 6 and 7, and then...
Oh, he's missed out using the, what's it called? Dude, where's my car clip?
Goku Black invades Trunks' timeline.
And
There's no consequence or meaningful connection in forming the next part of the story. And the drawbacks to this approach are innumerable, but include a loss of tension and an increase and demand for exposition at the forefront of each and every new arc that kills what could be a powerful sense of progression through the story. It ultimately tells the viewer that nothing much of consequence will occur, and you can just check back in at a later point. Thankfully, Horikoshi's My Hero Academia is far more like Dragon Ball Z with its approach to structure. Every single arc is informed at least in part by the prior. This is a consequential approach to writing, otherwise known as, and so therefore, storytelling.
That makes sense. It's the opposite of that.
Everything happens because of what happened
Before, yeah.
Deku gets powers, and so therefore he has a fighting chance in the entrance exam. He does injure himself, but does well in
All the ways on flops around.
that exam, and so therefore is enrolled in UA. This predisposition to injury prevents him from hero work, and so therefore he needs to find a way around that through the quirk assessment test. This natural flow of past events informing and heightening the consequences of future arcs is all over Horikoshi's work, and it's all the better for it. And so far, no other season of My Hero Academia has demonstrated the benefits to this structural approach better than Season 3.
Let's go.
お前のは一人を助けてデクノボーになるだけ。
In a strange turn of events, I think I enjoyed this arc more than I have in the past this time around. Maybe it's the manga, maybe it's the extra attention I'm affording the story, or maybe it's Maybelline, but whatever the
Maybe it is.
case may be, I found this and every subsequent arc to be far more compelling than I first recalled.
Oh, I remember, like, Season 1 to 3. Boom. It's Season 4 where it starts to, like, kind of dip off a bit. Like, yeah. And then 5 picks it back up again, and then we're up to 6 now, aren't we? Or so, I don't know. But it is cool that he's doing... I like how in his reviews he does the manga and anime looks and comparisons and things as well. Like, and kind of, like, looks at the way the paneling's done and story structures and things like that. It's but also the fun side as well.
The actions of Stain, the violence of the League of Villains, and the events of the prior chapter with Shigaraki, they all fundamentally inform UA's desire to speedrun the students' progression beyond what should be expected from them at this age. All in an effort to grant them access to a license which will allow them to wield their quirks in public. Immediately, as a reader, I'm like, oh shit, okay. Even UA is feeling the pressure to prepare these kids for what is emerging from these shadows.
Which makes you think, oh wow, there's a big deal. The higher ups are seeing something's going down. Something's going down.
This is getting serious. For the first few arcs, alongside Deku, we felt him grow and make significant strides on his journey to master his power, to truly become a hero, and that all comes crashing to the ground in this arc because, while they have all come far and been exposed to some horrific individuals, the point of this arc is to show them what desperation and failure feels like.
Oh my god.
Since the first season, Deku has been the sort of character that has had a profound impact on those around him. From All Might in the beginning to Bakugo, from Uraraka and Todoroki in the sports festival to Ida during the Stain arc. He's always been someone that's taken note of how someone is feeling and tries to make concerted efforts to resolve their inner turmoil as best he can. Upon first viewing all those years ago, I don't think I fully understood what Kota was within this story.
Crunch
Naturally, the explicit exposition about him being the son of two heroes who died in the line of duty to a villain painted a clear picture. He's grown to hate heroes and villains equally, because their actions took his parents from him. It seems overly simplistic, and it is, but once the League of Villains ambushes the two classes in the middle of their exercise, it all clicked into place for me. What made Kota such a difficult person for Deku specifically to reach was that he is the exact opposite of who Deku was. Having grown up quirkless with a passion for hero work and an admiration for all heroes, Deku could not relate to a young orphan with a powerful hatred for all things within their superhuman society.
Yeah, because he's grown up, like, wanting it. He's like, whoa, I respect these, I look up to them, this is, like, my, you know, this is what I want. And then it's
Villains,
like,
heroes,
this lad's
he
like,
didn't care.
nope.
These were the sorts of people complicit in his parents' demise. These people are why he has no one.
Yeah, it's like, Deku just like, whoa, come on now.
And because of these feelings, he hides from the fact that he too has a quirk just like his parents did. Everything about Kota is tailored perfectly by Horikoshi to be something Deku cannot begin to understand or relate to. What could he even say to someone like that? The answer? Nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
You simply allow your actions to speak for themselves, and to do that, you need the right dance partner. The purpose of Deku versus Muscular, or Goto, or whatever you want to call it,
Mate, he's such a psycho.
is twofold. Most plainly, this is a battle Horikoshi designed to demonstrate in no uncertain terms to Kota the difference between heroic virtue and selfish villainy. Pitting the significantly smaller Deku against this monstrously muscular foe, each of them armed with a very similar quirk to highlight that it's not the power that makes someone despicable, but rather how they choose to wield it. In the case of Muscular, he throws his weight around to satisfy his own self-interest. For Deku, it's simply to protect someone he knows can't protect themselves. In another one of those nail-biting, red-line efforts from Deku that sees him pushing past his limits farther than we've ever seen before, an effort that in many other manga would have been glorified, and while it does defeat this enemy, the second purpose of this fight has already been set in stone. Deku's greatest fear is about to become a reality.
また行動不能になって誰かに助けてもらうつもりだった。
From the very beginning, this entire arc has set out to demonstrate that despite the perceived experience gained or the immense courage shown, each and every student hasn't come nearly as far as they, or even we as readers, might have thought. Even someone like Bakugo, who we've seen take virtually no shortcuts whatsoever when it comes to self-improvement, exposes this fact of the matter, only managing to improve his quirk strength by the tiniest of fractions since he last had it measured. Improving upon this metric, therefore, becomes the bedrock of this arc's framework. In order for them to achieve their provisional hero licenses, which will allow them to use their powers more freely against potential villains, which is why they are here, they must first make considerable gains in their quirk's output. But you might be thinking, this is where Deku stands out amongst the rest. Time and time again, Bakugo has been taken aback by how much Deku has managed to improve. Out of all the children within the class, he has been the only one we've actually seen make tangible progress in mastering and perfecting the output of his quirk. He's already saved one person, and now running back to the gang, he needs to alert them to what's going on. Far more than just, hey, the villains are here, it turns out that they're after someone specific.
And that, yeah, what a twist that was. Oh, yes, I'm remembering now.
Bakugo.
Yeah, like, what? What?
And to make matters worse, they've got a hit list featuring a number of students within Class 1A. Something I was really impressed by during this arc was how bloody scary, mysterious, and effective all of the villains within this ambush were.
Is it this season as well that we don't learn the identity, but we are told that there must be a traitor within UA as well. Because, yeah, it's quite far back, isn't it, then, if that's the case? Because we only find out in the recent season, don't we? I think it's this season that it's like, whoa, there has to be a traitor within UA, yeah.
And it's all down, once again, to Horikoshi's approach, I believe. It's become expected that between chapters we are offered either expanded lore on the world, certain characters'
That's
costume
cool.
design, or, more specifically, the thought process behind certain characters. We've seen him touch on all of Class 1A, some of 1B, a number of the teachers' parents, and even some lesser-known heroes within the greater society, like Mount Lady. Each of these little infographic breakdowns helps us bond to these characters.
I love the clothing there. It looks so cute and cozy. Like, wow. Aw.
Familiarize ourselves with them and this world. However, despite all of this, he refrains at every opportunity from offering any of the villains this same exposure. And it's a 100% measured and intentional choice. Within one of the dividing chapters in an earlier volume, Horikoshi explains that he wanted the villains of this story to remain mysterious and dangerous. For us as readers to share in the fear, suspense, and confusion the mystery surrounding them facilitates. And in this arc, we feel that danger. Unaware of the exact threat, we are placed in the same shoes as the heroes while they navigate the woods filled with these powerful unknowns. Unknown threats that come from anywhere, even within Class 1A itself.
Oh, mate, yeah. Run!
Through our exploration into the Dark Woods, we are met with a host of terrifying encounters that force these young students to risk their lives in order to save others and escape, faced with the very opponents they have been shown they were not ready for. Heck, even the teachers seem to be caught unaware or out of their depths at times, understood by their attackers yet unaware of who they are. These chilling close calls against these psychos manifest in some of the most uncomfortable, revealing, and shocking stressors we've ever seen placed on our protagonists. Characters like Moonfish, a death row inmate that is about as terrifying as I've seen this series get. I mean, look at this guy in the manga.
He's definitely based off of, like, Hellraiser design. Must have. The guy must have watched Hellraiser and went, right, we're making a character.
Jesus! And then there's Toga, a sadistic character that reveals more about Uraraka than she even knew about herself. Each of these psychopaths places intense pressures on every student in different ways. Even in the encounters where the students find some success, like Tetsu's courage, Kendo's nerve, or Momo's resourcefulness against Mustard, it only further exposes how much they need to grow as individuals. Tetsu needs to be able to take a bullet more easily, Kendo needs to be willing to jump into battle more readily, and Momo needs to produce gear that isn't so easily compromised by a villain's attack. There's only one instance in this arc where something goes according to plan, and that's Momo's tracker on the Nomu, but more on that in a little while.
Okay.
Time and time again, Horikoshi confronts his readers with the uncomfortable reality that these kids are not ready.
No, they're not.
Culminating in a desperate surge
That's
to
what's
disarm
cool.
and fight against someone.
You build up these first two seasons, like, yeah, we've done the training, yeah, we've done the tournament arc, yeah, we've gone through all this, and it's like, yeah, but you still have no freaking clue what is out there.
They thought was an ally, having totally gone berserk. There's such a powerful, rising tension in these middle and closing moments. Continuously, things go from bad to worse and worse again. Heroes get compromised, villains escape, students are injured, and despite Deku's best efforts, despite all of them having their guard up and sticking together, they are still not safe. From right beneath their
the Marvel
noses,
suit.
without any indication whatsoever, Bakugo vanishes. None of this would be possible and wouldn't have been nearly as effective had Horikoshi not shrouded these villains in total mystery.
And the stuff we learn about them later as well, it's like, whoa.
Tenacity has been a calling card Deku has been readily deploying as a nuclear option when all else fails, and let's face it, all else fails fairly regularly. His shortcomings in the past have forced him to push past his fears and his weaknesses, destroying his body in the process. This is another such occasion. Having pushed himself to the point of collapse, unable to use a single limb, carried in pursuit of this kidnapper by his allies. But what makes this moment, and really this entire arc, a stellar component of this series, isn't his inability to push past his limits. We've all seen him do that time and again. It's not even his ability to formulate a thoughtful plan of counterattack. Again, we've all seen that. It's the fact that despite everything, what ultimately created the chance for him to save both Bakugo and Tokoyami was totally outside of Deku's purview. The sniper attack by Aoyama is the reason they managed to take back Tokoyami, and forever Deku will blame himself for being unable to even try and save his friend. Despite everything he's been through, despite facing his fears, competing in a tournament, being there for his friends, and gaining some mastery of his own abilities, much the same as every other student in this class, Deku has been exposed as having not come nearly as close as we once thought they all did. In the end, he has become exactly what Aizawa warned him he can't afford to be in these exact situations.
Useless.
A liability. Someone who has one good save in him before collapsing under the weight of his own ambition. Leaving Bakugo in the clutches of terrorists, fading away with the parting, choked out words of, "Stay back, Deku."
Yeah,
Another
well.
quote from him, void of context, that would fit perfectly within Bakugo's tough, established character. However, it's that context that reveals a deep concern and genuine desire to protect Deku from himself. The friend he knows is incapable, but always willing to throw his body at a problem until he either succeeds or fails. This is a powerful loss for the heroes of this story. A gut-wrenching blow to Deku's psyche and outlook, who no matter what will always blame himself and his inability to wield this borrowed power to save more than one person. Emotional, tragic, and compelling, this arc achieves this through Horikoshi's approach to tie what has already been established to inform our future. And he's not stopping here.
Oh, mate. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. This season, man.
In more ways than we might even appreciate at this very moment, this is an arc that is defined by the consequences of the past, informed by the misconceptions, mistakes, and misadventures that comprise this story's history. Everything that occurs in this arc takes place for a clear and established reason, facilitating one of the most emotionally powerful clashes in this entire series. Where Dragon Ball Super would have simply concluded the arc in an amicable fashion,
Yeah.
sending
And
everyone
then-
home happy, My Hero Academia decided to leave the conflict unresolved, thus allowing these untethered plot threads to dangle freely and inform all of the events and motivations moving forward. There isn't even boring exposition to establish why we should care in this moment. Instead, this arc is all like, get out of the fucking way, we gotta save Bakugo.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's a message I can get on board with. And what's more is,
Yeah.
if we choose to push those surface level motivations to one side, there's still a host of other complicated emotional consequences that move each and every one of these characters to act in ways that make this arc my new favorite in this series. All Might feels a profound and intense guilt for not having been there to protect the children from these monsters. Now motivated and willing to move heaven and earth, he is on a mission with this school to retrieve Bakugo safely. However, and perhaps most interestingly than all of that, is the implication this ambush in the forest has brought to the principal's attention. The activities as well as the camp's location was purposely hidden from the public. Therefore,
Here we go. Yeah. Here we go.
UA must have a mole of sorts. And it could be anyone. So while all of that is plenty compelling on its own, there's an entire scene with each student expressing how the attack has affected them and how they each feel about one thing: going after Bakugo themselves.
飯田君違うんだよ。僕らだってルールを破っていいなんて。
Shut up!
In the last arc, I pointed out a particular quote that acted as an omen of sorts for Deku's character. A prophetic warning Aizawa offered him when he first joined the school. A warning that took shape and was fully realized during the nightmarish conclusion to the prior arc. Deku didn't come as far as we all thought he did. He failed definitively, allowing someone he cared about to be stolen away by murderers, while all he could do was look on helplessly. Nothing but a liability to those around him. It's a moment that speaks to All Might's inner turmoil and Shigaraki's feelings towards heroes in general. And as Deku sits ruminating on his body's refusal to move, another quote from this story's past resurfaces. Most of the top heroes show signs of greatness as children. Many of them claim that their bodies simply moved before they could think. This is a quote that thrusts us as viewers and readers back to Deku's impromptu and attempted save of Bakugo in Chapter 1. His heart then was in the right place, but without any powers, he was unable to offer anything beyond inspiration for someone who could help, making him nothing more than another civilian in the way. Present-day Deku, however, more than any of the other classmates, needs to prove to himself that he's more than what he's shown himself to be, that he can be a great hero, and that he can help without destroying himself in the process. Accompanied by Kirishima, Todoroki, Momo, and now even Ida himself, armed with their failings and experiences of times past, they march not to confront any great evil, to seek revenge, or to prove a point to someone else, but to instead work within the law and retrieve Bakugo without being seen. Something even Ida, who carries with him the shame of the Stain arc, can get on board with.
Let's go.
The entire point of this plot thread and story, therefore, is to right the wrongs of the past. And as All Might and the volunteers of Class 1A set out into the darkness of the night, we come to realize that while they play a key role in this story, they are not the sole main characters. For they share this spotlight with another budding prospect and his attentive mentor. Initially presented and framed as a moment of hope and defiance for Bakugo, granting credence to Aizawa's characterization of him on the news, this is not at all a scene that instills hope for the future, but rather concern. In the past, Shigaraki has behaved childishly, lashing out with chaotic, petulant emotion when he didn't get his own way. However, through the careful and considered guidance of All for One, slowly Shigaraki has shown signs of growth. Attacked by Bakugo in this scene, we need only look at Kurogiri's reaction of what he once expected from him. But this time, Shigaraki doesn't lash out.
Yeah, that's what's really interesting. Like, you get Shigaraki and Deku, I think, are the two main focuses of, like, character progression you see. And later on, the villains do get more of a time to shine, and yeah, you get the two sides of this world shown through the young children. So Shigaraki is the villain side, and then Deku is the hero side.
He doesn't even storm off. He simply takes it in his stride and requests support calmly. A choice you can tell All for One is proud he was capable of making. No longer is this a child playing villain. Shigaraki is becoming increasingly dangerous with each and every page turn. While I've spent a considerable amount of time talking about the struggles of Class 1A, Bakugo, as well as the crushing and relentless expectations placed on All Might's ever-weakening shoulders, once Bakugo is stolen away from safety yet again and All for One makes his presence known, Horikoshi finally reveals his hand. This is not necessarily an arc about Deku, Bakugo, or even Shigaraki, but rather the future they hope to inherit. The failures of the past carry with them a heavy debt, and these debts can only be paid through sacrifice. Finally, these two juggernauts in the twilight of their tenure ready themselves not to win this battle, but to secure a future they believe in.
Ooh, the music.
This is All Might versus All for One.
Mate.
One of my favorite creative choices made by Horikoshi within this fight
The
was
music.
his decision to treat Shigaraki and One for All not simply as
It kind of Devil Artemis is kind of made this music kind of funny though, hasn't he, with the League of Memes and that, but whatever.
monsters, but as real people with aspirations and those they care deeply about too. It breathes not only new life into the complexities of this world, but begins to change the atmosphere and dynamic of this entire series. Where villains were once purposely being kept in the shadows to leverage their mystery and power as a tension-building device, now Horikoshi begins to lift the curtain, and it's not at all what we expected. Through the lens of Shigaraki and All for One, All Might is positioned as this formidable and terrifying threat to what they want and who they care about. In the exact same way All Might has been a father figure and mentor to Deku, so too has All for One been an important formative figure in the life of Shigaraki.
Yeah, there you go. It's like the two sides of this world.
We've been told through this series and within this fight that the current intel suggests All for One is concerned with his own longevity and safety only. That he's manipulative and calculating to the extreme, a callous individual. However, real people are rarely so simple. And as All for One reassures and saves Shigaraki at his own expense time and time again in this fight, something starts to become very clear. While All Might was fundamentally changed following that last encounter, reduced to a shell of his former self, he wasn't the only one that day who was changed. The opening to this bout presents an exchange between two number ones, each one offering verbal barbs that criticize the other's slip from grace. All Might's strength and speed has dipped considerably, and All for One's dramatic physical deterioration is evident also. Neither are what they once were, and that's the point. This story is about consequences and the lengths one will go to save the person they love. Just like all those
Oh, that moment, it's like, don't go, don't go.
volumes and episodes ago, Deku is once again faced with what seems like a hopeless situation. Forced to look on as Bakugo, unable to escape, is left to fend for himself in a losing effort. It's easy now to see the parallels between this paralyzing dilemma and what came before, and how the events of the prior arc only heighten the sense of desperation and sorrow in the child's mind. But it's not our setbacks that define us. It is how we react to those setbacks that determines who we are. Do we cower away and cry? Or do we do everything we can to learn from those experiences, accept our failures, and react accordingly? The plan Deku ultimately formulates is perfectly tailored to this situation. One that does not get in the way of All Might, it saves Bakugo and technically falls within the letter of the law. It wasn't even an attack or anything that could have put them in any more trouble than they otherwise were. Looking back on this series, I think it's safe to say that this scene demonstrates Deku's growth as a character far more than any we've seen before. He's always been one to show an unwavering determination to save someone despite his own body's limitations. But he's now seen and understood that such an approach comes with harrowing consequences. This plan he formulated with the help of Todoroki, Ida, Kirishima, and Momo certainly comes with all of the resourceful trappings a Deku plan implements, but what makes this moment special is that no one was hurt, not even he. The balance of this fight is truly something to marvel at, with it very much being a tale of a pupil forcefully torn away from his master, one who's facing worsening circumstances only thinking of their future. From Shigaraki's perspective, All For One, in every sense of the word, is his hero, occupying a decaying and limiting body against the greatest force this world has ever seen, All Might. However, never to be outdone, All For One targets the weakest points of his enemies. Through facilitating the reveal of All Might's true frail form to the world, he takes this chance to share with him something he knew would shatter his spirit. Shigaraki isn't some random psychopath.
Oh,
He
yeah?
is the grandson of his former master, retroactively making
Yo, oh my god, so many reveals. I forgot about that as well. Oh my god.
Shigaraki the living embodiment of All Might's failure as a hero, rendering the symbol of peace All Might dedicated his life to shape nothing more than a hollow promise. In the end, this great symbol for peace couldn't even give hope to the one person it should have. Instead, it helped give rise to a darkness the likes this world will never forget.
Oh my
And to
god.
All For One, this was his killing blow. The silver bullet to pierce All Might's unshakable ideals. And at one point in time, this would have worked. But today is different. For since that day, a new purpose came running into All Might's life. A purpose which taught him that it's not your setbacks that define you, but how you react to those very setbacks that determines who you are. His time as the symbol of peace might be over. He may not have been the hero he wanted to be, but out there's still a little kid that needs someone one last time to believe in. A kid that needs guidance towards that promising future. And this monster is standing in the way of that. No longer possessing the abilities he once had, he decides to take a leaf once again out of a certain playbook. Thankfully, someone was there to show him that when your body isn't strong enough to contain this power any longer, sometimes you need some careful strategy and a lot of guts to carry you across that finish
Hell yeah,
line.
let's go.
If there's one thing this fight confirmed above all else to me, it's that neither All Might nor All For One fully understood each other. And in the end, it was almost both of their undoing. In a way, I'm sure on some level, All For One is satisfied with his fate and the impact it will no doubt have on the promising Shigaraki. But on the other hand, for All Might, while he once again came through for mankind, the entire occasion is coated in a palpable sadness. A touching cap on what has been an incredible career for All Might, now the world's former number
Oh man.
Despite having given up every last ounce of power left in his body for the people he's sworn to protect, despite being faced with his countless failings as a symbol for peace and a teacher, in the face of certain doom, All Might stood fragile but firm in his ideals.
Mate. Oh. this season's so good. This season is so freaking good. I forgot about all the twists and turns and reveals and that as well, and it's just like, whoa! But yeah, yo!
Championing a brighter future for everyone, despite him no longer possessing the requisite strength to carry that torch any longer. It seems with each passing day, the heavy burden this new generation is expected to carry grows exponentially, and not just for Deku. The Provisional Hero License Exam arc is less a test one needs to pass and more so, within the broader scope of the story, a section where we all learn how this world continues to spin without its Superman. It's difficult to overstate what sort of impact a figure like All Might has had, and here Horikoshi attempts to answer the question, what now? Because of the shadow All Might once cast, emphasis was taken away from who he was and how he operated as part of a team, which resulted in schools and broader hero society rewarding individualism rather than teamwork itself. This is why groups like the Wild Wild Pussycats are one of a few these days, despite teams being much more of a common thing in the past. Since the story began, we've only really seen how Deku isn't All Might, and so, with this sudden shift away from an All Might driven society, I was really interested to see how someone like Deku would fare, and more than that, see how this shift would impact his progress as a character.
Oh, isn't this where he starts to learn to kick? He's like, hey, I'm gonna stop punching out and start kicking as well.
And what I noticed was staggering. Round 1. In the past, I found the likes of Todoroki, Bakugo, and Uraraka extremely compelling in combat, and I thought it was entirely down to who they were or their personalities. Bakugo's bravado in the face of unwavering terror is invigorating, if not downright inspiring. Todoroki's internal conflict and familial expectation creates its own drama, and Uraraka's determination to not be left behind and find her own inner strength is powerful to watch. These personalities and many more you might think are all more complicated and interesting than Deku's, and at one point in time I would have agreed with you. There's only so far you can take that scared boy stands up for himself mentality before you experience diminishing returns after all. So, what did Horikoshi do to make him interesting? Well, the exact same thing he did with every other character I just mentioned. In My Hero Academia, the power a hero wields is as intrinsically a part of their physical being as a professional runner's legs are a part of them. They are a physical extension of the character, and in the hands of Horikoshi, a foil with which everyone's inner struggle is exacerbated. He gave Bakugo a power set that gave him every advantage a hero could ask for, and through doing so made failure that much more crushing. He gave Todoroki a power that highlighted the very struggle within his mind, a struggle between two identities, forcing him every single time he looks in the mirror to contend with that reality. He gave Uraraka, a girl who needs to become a great hero to provide for her family, a power that doesn't naturally mix well in combat, forcing her to think outside of the box and try harder than many of the others to break even. If you were to suddenly give Bakugo Uraraka's power, his character's relationship with success and failure would be flipped on its head.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense or be nearly as interesting. And the same goes for all of the rest. This is why when the exam begins and everyone from the opposing schools focuses their attacks on Class 1A, they ultimately fail. Because while they might think they have the ultimate advantage by knowing of their quirks inside and out ahead of time, what allows these characters to find success and to overcome is the personality that complements these powers. And I think that's partially why they are called quirks and not powers. These are more than powers, they are physical manifestations of their
themselves,
own personalities and struggles. So when it came for Deku, the most anxious, self-critical, and self-sacrificing character, Horikoshi decided to give him a power that could literally blow up in his face if he wasn't extremely careful. From the very beginning of this story, what made Deku a powerful character was that he was an outsider, someone who lacked what made everyone else confident and special, he thought. But what's interesting is that through gaining the most incredible power possible, he realizes that he's still an outsider in some respects. While everyone spends their time exploring the powers they've devised spectacular and flashy techniques to strengthen their output, Deku's full cowling, shoot style or not, while it's presented like a power-up for Deku to use, this and all of his techniques are nothing more than a series of compromises and power limiters. It's like the opposite of the Kaioken in Dragon Ball with all of the same drawbacks. Through gaining what he thought was preventing him from being an outsider, it only further served to isolate him. emphasizing that it's not the powers that make the hero, but the person who makes the powers. On its face, you might look at Deku's progression with his powers as one typical of many stories. Through practice and hard work, he gained what others couldn't, but in reality, it's a character drama more than a battle shonen in many respects. In practically every instance he succeeds or makes progress in this story, it's due to him learning to accept the value of who he is, and every time he experiences a setback, it's due to him trying to be something that he's not. In the first round of the provisional license exam, Bakugo and Deku are the focus of a particular monologue from Aizawa, within which he doesn't champion their individual skills or prowess, which are clearly commendable, but instead, knowing only a certain amount of time is left for them to qualify, he points out that they each have an incredible ability to inspire vigor in those around them. Deku through formulating a brilliant plan with Uraraka and Sero, and Bakugo through Kaminari, a very unsure of himself character, now pushed to be a hero we all know he can be. That's what this first round is. A vehicle that demonstrates how understanding a power is only half of the equation. How a student that specializes in speed can be slow to qualify. How a character that shines bright opts to hide and cower away. And so, as I looked into the upcoming round 2, my mind was suddenly filled with questions and predictions born from the dynamics we saw in Class 1A. Will Uraraka become a flashy, powerful hero, or fail under the weight of her own lofty expectations? Will Todoroki embrace who he is and forgive himself, or will he crumble and fall to his own sense of inadequacy? Will Bakugo and Deku find emotional security? Will Deku learn that it's okay to not always sacrifice yourself for the needs of others?
Will they kiss?
And will Bakugo learn to feel satisfaction in support and sacrifice in himself? Because these powers, aptly known as quirks, are as intrinsic to the characters as their own personalities are. And when it comes to Bakugo and Deku, as we will see in the best part of and conclusion to this arc, they are extremely important to one another. Round 2.
だってあんたはエンデヴァーの息子だ!
While round 1 focused on the internal conflicts and qualities of these budding heroes, round 2 focuses on the macro instead, and how the passing of All Might has changed the landscape of broader hero society. You might therefore think Yoarashi and Todoroki's personal grudge is a strange place to hedge a broader point then. However, in reality, it's the perfect example. In prior material I mentioned that All Might, while he was a formidable hero and symbol for peace, he also, I believe, inadvertently created a false expectation for what the ideal hero should be. An expectation that manifested in extremists such as Stain and the biased hero vetting process schools such as UA participated in. This entire sentiment is finally expressed during All Might's conversation with All For One following this exam too. But with that said, I am pleased to see that due to the unlikelihood of someone like All Might ever showing up again, the Board of Education has revised this license exam to place weight on the psychological strength behind their powers, and the power of unity rather than individuality, allowing those with personalities and abilities better suited to evacuation to garner as many points as those with flashy, powerful quirks like Deku, Bakugo, and indeed, Todoroki and Yoarashi. Endeavor is a pivotal character in both of these young heroes' lives and the source of this intense argument between these two. Yoarashi hates Endeavor, and by association Todoroki, who strikes him as the same sort of individual, which is quite possibly the worst sort of endorsement someone like Todoroki could possibly hear.
Yeah, like they nothing alike. They ain't the same. They ain't the same.
The conflict between these two, as is the case with many battles, ebbs and flows. However, for me, at the center of it all are the remnants of All Might's influence. Whether inadvertently or not, All Might's hero society fostered an ego in Endeavor and, more than that, created a society within which he could thrive. He is the way that he is and in the position that he's in, at least in part due to All Might. However, this is a different time and a different sort of test, one that does not grant those with specific quirks with any sort of advantage. And as such, despite them finding a resolution of sorts and finding that they are incredibly effective working together, ultimately neither student passed because it was too little too late. In fact, with the conclusion of this second round, neither of Class 1A's top 2 students passed. A shining example that the flawed system that once was is no longer in place. However, it also came not as a total failing on their parts, but an opportunity to learn from this mistake, grow, and still qualify. A remarkable improvement from what was, in my view. Overall, the provisional license exam is a monument to the future of the series. Its messaging is filled with a hopeful optimism for the future as well as the haunting echoes of a system that once was. And of course, we were not allowed to forget what the purpose of this license was in the very first place, with those like Toga, Twice, and even Overhaul making their presence felt in a number of areas.
Oh mate, Overhaul. So is that season 4? Wait, 'cause then that was alright. Is it season 5 then that it falls off? But I remember enjoying the Overhaul bit. Overhaul's so it must have been season 5 I kind of fell off it then.
What lays before these heroes is a complicated path filled with complicated characters.
おい後で表出ろ
Oh,
例の個性の話
let's fight.
Despite the namesake of this arc, this encounter and confrontation further emphasizes that while the exam itself was the stage used to present the conflict, the source of it has always been All Might. With Bakugo having faced what it's like to lose to Deku yet again, conflicted and clearly hurting, he expresses that he knows about Deku's power, that he knows the role All Might has played in his sudden rise to prominence, and more than that, wants to fight him one-on-one to determine whose admiration, as he puts it, is correct. A confusing and curious thing to question, to say the least. In my very first video covering this story, I've expressed how with Bakugo, first appearances can be deceiving, which is why Horikoshi created characters like Kirishima and Kaminari to create more opportunities for him to explain himself and exposit naturally. And to put it lightly, Deku, since the beginning of this tale, has not been that for him. If anything, he's been a force that pushes him in all the most off-putting of ways, which is fitting as their initial pairing was designed to showcase two diametrically opposed approaches to that same brand of heroism. And as I said again in an earlier video, these two characters are very much two sides of the exact same coin. However, a considerable amount of time has passed since those initial confrontations, and the moment this scene begins, that difference is there for all to see. Bakugo instigates the conversation. He's emotionally vulnerable in this exchange, and through Deku learning to be assertive in his retaliation, becomes something Kirishima and Kaminari have been in the past. A force that allows Bakugo to open up further and explain himself.
俺はオールマイトを終わらせちまってんだ俺が強くてヴィランにさらわれなんかしやげりゃあんなことになってなかった
With our focus squarely on Deku throughout this series, we neglected to consider how such an event would make Bakugo feel. In the same way Tsuyu felt tremendous guilt for what she said in the hospital to the gang trying to save Bakugo, Horikoshi in this moment reminds us that these are far more than side characters, that a passing glance matters, that what they say at any given moment can matter. They are all fully realized individuals that whether or not they remain the focus of this story at every given moment, they are always there, dwelling on and dealing with their own individual struggles and regrets. Incidentally, both Deku and Bakugo have been blaming themselves for All Might's demise, both with valid reasons for feeling the way that they do, and with that, suddenly Deku has something to fight with. The battle is brief but very memorable given the setting and circumstances, with Bakugo exposing and exploiting the very weaknesses Deku's approach to combat brings, the same flaws which cost him points during the exam he just passed. It's a nice little detail that proves Bakugo has studied Deku like he has done so with him in the past, which means slowly this story is pushing these two characters away from the extremes that they once occupied, and through doing so creates the possibility for them to once again become friends.
予備動作がでけえ速度アップしてもギリ反応できた乱打戦には向かねえ
From the moment I began creating this series, I've approached it as someone revisiting a story they had already watched and loved. I knew when Bakugo was being an unmistakable dick cheese, I needed to allow room when I was writing these videos for Bakugo to grow like I knew he would. I knew when it came to Todoroki, he too would blossom and grow, and even in the case of All Might, because I knew the fate he would ultimately meet, I was able to structure this entire video contending with his morality and the struggles that come with living in his shadow, both from the perspective of Deku and society at large. However, this is the last week I get to take this approach. While I have loved taking the opportunity to break down how I believe this story has been written and why I thought it was effective as a compelling piece of fiction, next week that all changes. At the very beginning of the first video, I mentioned that halfway through Season 4, I suddenly dropped this series entirely. So, in the next video, we will finally be diving into my blind review for My Hero Academia. Will the series continue to build on the quality I've been enjoying so far, or will it fall off a cliff? Only one way to find out for sure, and I hope to see you all there next time when I tackle Season 4. Until then, I've been Totally Not Mark, and thank you all so much for watching.
あの日守ると決めた約束はこの胸に
Wow. No, yeah, so it must have been season 4. I remember watching season 4, and then it was season 5 that I struggled with and stopped. Yes, because I watched the Overhaul story. I remember that. So, yeah, and then season 6 got me back in, and then we're on 7 now, I think. Yeah, that's what this year's was. Cool, we established it. Good review, really cool. I forgot about the twists and turns. I forgot about Shigaraki being Thingy's granddaughter and all that stuff, and bam, bam, and the All for One for All fight, and Bakugo being kidnapped, and the UA trainer, who is it? Whoa, and all that. Loads going on in that. Yeah, crazy. Thanks for watching.
Click like and subscribe. Pixel Party Pals! Pixel Party Pals!